Robin, Hong Kong has a number of food charities, so why and how is FoodLink different?
You know, a lot of the food charities in Hong Kong, we work very closely together. I think it's important to have that synergy. So we work very closely with Feeding Hong Kong and Food Angels. What sets FoodLink apart is the fact that we pick up hot food, ready-made hot food, directly from the buffet lines, and that supplies the food for our beneficiaries. So instead of having to recook, repack, or do warehouse, we go directly from the buffet lines straight to our beneficiaries so they can have it for lunch and dinner.
Now, I appreciate that the more money you have, the bigger the job you can do. But essentially, in order to open the doors for business, as it were, each day, what level of donations do you need to have coming in each month?
We're looking at a run rate of 2 million Hong Kong dollars a year annually, just to support our 5 vans and all our operations. And that essentially works out to $7 a meal. So in the grand scheme of things, if you put it into perspective, it's actually not a lot.
And what is your main source of donation so far?
Right now, you know, we've been very fortunate. We've been granted funding from Operation Santa Claus, as well as the Environment and Conservation Fund. But we're still short, and we need to have that safety net, as it were, to be able to continue the work that we do. And so we rely very heavily on corporates, foundations, and grants and private donors and philanthropists to support our cause and to be empathetic and help out with the work that we do.
How many meals are you able to serve every day?
Currently, we are providing around 13,000 meals a week, and this is all based on surplus food that would otherwise end up in landfill. So, you know, but if we can provide 1 meal a day to one person, that's all we need to do.
How big is the need, would you say, really?
Well, for a city like Hong Kong, where there are 735,000 millionaires, but in which 1 in 5 people still live, 1 in 5 children live under the poverty line, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I think that we have a long ways to go. Until that poverty statistic changes, then we have to keep up the work.
How did FoodLink come into being?
My mother actually started the charity in 2001. She was having lunch with her girlfriends, and she looked over at the buffet table, and there was all this surplus food. And being from a foodie family, she's, you know, where's all this food going? And the chef said, we usually just throw it out. And she says, do you know you actually have a charity, a homeless shelter right behind your hotel? And he said, yeah, but we cannot bear that liability. She goes, okay, I'll bear it. So give it to me, and I'll donate it. And so she started in 2001. In 2003, SARS hit Hong Kong, and so we were on a bit of a hiatus. And then in 2009, I think this issue of food waste and poverty and hunger was really a burden on my mother's heart, and so she kind of recruited her children. I think maybe that's what children are for. And so we can't say no to mom. And so we continued, we picked up the work, we established FoodLink as a registered charity. We set up a board of directors, we rebranded the charity, and we've taken off since. So in 2009, we used to have 3 hotel donors and 3 beneficiaries. And today we have 80 food donors and 84 different beneficiaries and charities that we work with.
Your day-to-day work, just talk us through how your typical working day is represented.
I'm a volunteer at FoodLink, so I usually go to my paying job during the day, and then I volunteer with FoodLink in the evenings and at night. So I help FoodLink with fundraising mostly, and also to increase our profile so that people know about us and the work that we do. A lot of the work that we do involves awareness and education, and just letting people know that poverty exists in Hong Kong and there is something that can be done about it.
What can the average man on the street do to help you in your mission?
First is to support FoodLink and the work that we do. Second is to be socially conscious of your actions and not waste food, because otherwise it will end up in landfill. And Hong Kong's landfill, we're at a critical capacity right now. There's nowhere else for our trash to go. So I think everybody has to do their part. To not over-order. I think it's very easy in Hong Kong when we're so spoiled for choice to have that abundance of food. To learn how to take away, and food is good the next day, and to not create that waste, and to also just be aware that we have this huge problem of poverty in our city, with the elderly and the children, and often it's out of sight, out of mind. And so just to be aware and to support charities that alleviate poverty in our city.
Given the obvious connection between hunger and landfill, what response or support have you had from our government?
We've been invited to sit on the FoodWise campaign as a consultant because we've been, I guess, in the business longer than government's been aware, and I think sometimes that's the role that NGOs have to play, is to fill that gap first before the government comes and steps in. I think with policy it's tough because it takes a long time for legislation to pass. So, for example, one of the legislation that we've been trying to push for is the Good Samaritan law. So that protects our food donors from liability should somebody get sick from eating the food. But as with most policies, it takes some time. But I am grateful that the government has brought light and brought attention to the problem of food waste in our city and is trying to work together with NGOs and the community to try alleviate this problem.
Your clients, the customers for your good deeds, what do they generally think about the state that they're in, and that they are poor and that they need the kind of support that you give them, especially in such a wealthy town like ours?
I think it's tough. We work with everybody from the elderly, the low-income families, children, drug rehabilitation centers, migrant workers, asylum seekers. And even for the asylum seekers, they don't have status in Hong Kong, but they're stuck here. So they're very grateful for the food that we are able to provide for them. But at the same time, a lot of the charities we work with are very grassroots, so they don't have the means or the resources to have a food program. And, our mission is to be able to provide a hot and healthy meal to everybody that has a need, because for us, food is a basic human right that everybody should have access to. And so if we can provide that for them, then they can focus on trying to better their lives in other ways. My mother always says, when people are hungry, that's when they become desperate. So at least if we can feed that hunger and to reach out to the community and show them that there are people that care about them and there are people that are trying to love on them and make a difference, then, I think that itself alleviates the hardship that they feel already.
To feed everybody that needs to be fed, how big in terms of a multiple would the charitable sector in this space have to be compared to where it is now?
I think if all the charities work together and identify where the needs are in our community, I think we still have quite a long way to go. FoodLink's been around for a while, and it's very disheartening to talk to government and find out that the poverty line is still 1 in 5. That's 300,000 elderly people. And it breaks your heart when you see them struggling and, pushing those carts and selling cardboard and digging through rubbish. They deserve to have a more dignified life. And I think there's a lot that charities can do, but there's a lot that government can do as well. And I think there's a lot of support from community. It's not just government, it's not just NGOs, but people in the corporate space, people in the private space as well. There needs to be a lot of cross-sector collaboration in order to make our city more livable and definitely more equal.